Hey everybody, Rosematter here, and welcome to part 8 of my Steins Gate Zero Let's Play. Holy cow, last episode was crazy. Had a whole bunch of stuff happen. The big thing is that Okabe finally took Maho to where Kirisu was killed and gave her more information about, like, Kirisu and what was going on before she died. Of course, he didn't say specifically he was the cause of her death, but things like the time machine research she was doing and the like who her father is and all of that stuff. So Maho now knows about this, and because Maho also has Kirisu's laptop, they encountered a group of MIBs that were after her. And also we learned that Maho was the one who asked Daru to like hack into Kirisu's laptop. So that must have tipped somebody off. They're after her and the laptop. Her hotel room got ransacked. The lab got ransacked. She managed to make it back to America okay. But the big reveal is that, as I predicted, Dr. Leskinen is not who we thought he was. He's not just this jovial, happy-go-lucky, childish professor, researcher. He is way more sinister than we thought. He has ulterior motives, and he was using Okabe, and he plans on going back to Japan and getting in touch with him for nefarious reasons. And the thing is, now because Maho knows all of these things that Okabe told her, her AI will also know it because Dr. Leskinen basically forced her to upload the information. Everything that happened to her, all this information she learned, now he's probably going to know about it too because it's going to be uploaded into her Amadeus AI. So he basically threatened Maho, saying like, oh, you're going to be coming back to Japan as well. So she is probably going to have to go along with whatever plan he's got, because she knows now, like, she's caught up in it. So that makes me nervous, but I'm so excited because now we have like an antagonist here. We have someone that we know is working against us. So I'm really excited to see like how it's going to progress from here. Enough about all that. Let's get back into it. Let's see what happens next. All right, 6:25, almost July, so that means Suzuha will be leaving soon. So things should be wrapping up soon, I imagine. It was almost July. The rainy season hadn't been that bad this year, and what little remained of it had already disappeared. Temperature-wise, summer had come a long time ago. Aww. In other words, it had been almost a year since it happened. And then one Saturday afternoon, if I stayed home, not only would it be hot, but Dad would be on my case about helping with a family business. To get away, I'd come to the area around Ikebukuro Station. A year ago, I could have gone to the lab, but with Suzuha living there now, I'd mostly stopped going. But that meant it was hard to find a place to study on my days off. It was too much trouble to go to the university, and the classrooms probably weren't open on weekends anyway. After a lot of research, I'd settled on spending my free days visiting this cafe near my parents' home and spending a few hours there. In fact, a lot of the other patrons did the same thing I did, buying a single cup of coffee and sitting there for hours on end. Some brought books, some brought computers. I chuckled to myself as I realized that I joined the ranks of the other normies. Yeah, let's check this out. Myri, doot-daroo, where are you? Oh, the usual cafe, right? I just went to your place and you weren't home. You did? Did my dad make a nuisance of himself again? It's okay, he gave me some barley tea. I have to go shopping. Will you come with me? Okay. Thank you. Adorable. I love that they have their own little stickers. Okay, I'll leave now. Wait for me. So, they went to my house? My family's business was called Okabe Green Grocer. It was a beat-up old store located in a rundown shopping street. The place was almost 40 years old. I really wanted them to rebuild it. I don't know if this is the first time I've heard about Okabe's family in general. Like, they're, like, mentioning his dad. I was like, oh, right, he's pretty young. He's got parents. That makes sense. And, like, learning about that they have a business. I was like, I didn't know that. My mind had wandered. Myri was going to be here in less than 15 minutes, so maybe it was time to call it a day. I worked pretty hard during the morning, so it wasn't too bad. I was a little surprised at how hard I'd been working lately. I could feel how having a goal gave me energy. I needed to get to Victor University as soon as I could. No, you don't. You do not want to be there. Nope. Since I was still testing Amadeus, I'd kept in touch with Maho via email and online chat. She must have been working hard because she was always sleepy. Oh, speaking of the devil, Amadeus, and because of the fact, I chose not to turn my phone off and continue on with the Amadeus research, that was probably, now that we know the whole thing about, what Amadeus, or at least have an idea that Amadeus, is not going to be used for the best purposes, apparently, according to, Rintaro's images of the future. So by not interacting with Amadeus, that's probably going to actually help us out. But yeah, I'm really curious to see how this specific world line is going to end. All right, let's connect.
Hi.
何よ。どうして声を潜めてる？
し今店の中なんだ。頼むから。俺の都合に関係なく連絡してくるのはやめてくれ。
あんたがどこで何してるかなんてさすがに把握してないわよ。それとも私に24時間監視してほしいの？あんたが寝てる姿とかお風呂入ってる姿とか全部覗き見してほしいと？なかなかの変態ね。
知った口を聞いてすみませんでした。
私が連絡したってあんたが出たくなければ出なくていいの。それぐらいで怒ったりしない。
So there's there's a little bit of a hint there. It's like, hey, you don't always have to answer the phone when she calls, but I'm choosing to do that this time.
まあ、今は迷惑みたいだからお望み通り切るわ。確かにスマホで 3D モデルの女と真面目な顔して会話してる大学生男子ってかなり気持ち悪いし。
お前な。
冗談よ。いつも相手をしてくれて、これでも一応感謝はしてるんだからな。
そういう話はいいから、とにかく切るぞ。
Kirisu always talked so much. The real one used to talk a lot too. Talking to her in a place like this always drew a lot of attention and made me feel awkward. Looking at a screen and talking was embarrassing, was all, so I'd once proposed I talk to her like I was on a normal phone. And this is what she said. Why do I have to stare at a close-up of the side of your head? She really was a selfish little program. Mayuri and I met up and headed for Tokyo Hands. When I stepped inside the air-conditioned store, I felt refreshed. If it was this hot in June, I shuddered to think what it was going to be like in July or August.
それで
Oh, she looks so cute and everything. Oh my goodness. It's weird to see her without any sort of hat or anything.
商品宣伝用のポップを作るんだ。だからそれ用のカードとか蛍光ペンとか。
今年はコミマで同人誌でも出す気か？
違うよ。岡部製菓店で使うんだよ。
は？なんだって？
My family business.
今日オカリンの家に行った時にね、おじさんとそんな話になって、じゃあマユシーが作りますって立候補したの。
おいおい。
My dad could be such a jerk.
お前がそんなことする必要ないんだぞ。
でもマユシーがやりたいからやっているのです。
本当にいいのか？
オカリンやおじさんおばさんにはいつもお世話になってるから。
じゃあ代わりに今度何かプレゼントするよ。
本当？嬉しいな。
I took a quick look around and saw they were selling a lot of things you could use for advertising. I decided to mostly leave the purchasing decisions up to Mayuri. She spent quite a while deciding what to buy, but, well, maybe because of all the time she spent at Mei Queen Yan, her taste ran in the direction of cute and anime. Part of me thought it was dangerous to leave it up to her, but still, they'd asked her, not me. It wasn't any of my business. I should just leave it to her. And so I decided to wander around the store while Mayuri finished her shopping, but... Oh my goodness. Oh, Kirisu, you're so needy.
どうかしたか？
もしかして買い物中？
ああ、まゆりとな。
へえ、デート？
She's like, don't be cheating on Maho now.
その呼び方はやめろと言ったろうが。
だったらお前も恋愛脳の癖を直すんだな。
はいはい、わかったわよ。でも、まゆりさんって可愛いわよね。あんな可愛い年下の幼馴染がいるなんて、あんた恵まれてるわよ。
そうだな。
これじゃ真帆先輩の勝ち目は絶対的じゃない。
Damn. Also, the fact that Maho's in another country, that's also a factor.
可愛げもないし、年齢でも勝てないし、身長も負けてるし、あとバスト的なものも惨敗だし。
Damn. Kirisu, have you told Maho this and to her face? I wouldn't be surprised if Kirisu did. She tends to be pretty
かわい
blunt.
そうな先輩。
それをヒヤジョーさんの前で言ったら、プログラム丸ごと消去されるぞ。
というか、私、いまだにまゆりさんを紹介してもらってない。あんた、友達は結構いるのに、私のことは誰
Yeah,
も教え
also,
よう
it's
とし
funny
ない
how,
わよ
like,
ね
with the exception of Daru, and I know Lukako is a guy, but he looks like a very cute girl. And it's like, Okabe is just surrounded by cute girls, isn't he?
守秘義務的なものがあるんだ。あまり人に教えないようにって言われてる。
本当にそれだけなの？実は私と話してるのを人に見られたくないんじゃない？
そんなことはないさ。どうしても紹介してほしいなら、ヒヤジョーさんに許可をもらうぞ。手始めに、俺が一番頼りにしている男であるダルを紹介しよう。
She's like, I don't want to talk to that pervert.
あいつなら、お前には相当食いつくはずだ。
She's like, you know what, never mind.
24時間延々とエロ目線で見つめられてハーハーされ続けるんですね。わかります。変態が怖い。
Kirisu went pale and started to shake. I told Kirisu all kinds of things about what kind of person Dar was. This would be hilarious if, like, those guys who get, you know, like the AI girls and stuff, if they had this kind of program where they were actively disgusted by them. I feel like that would not be good. The AI would not be good for that purpose. She could easily imagine what would happen if she ever fell into his clutches.
やっぱり紹介はしてくれなくていいわ。あんたが相手をしてくれるだけで十分と思わなくちゃ。
おかりー。
Mayuri walked over carrying a shopping basket.
あれ？今誰と話してたの？
I looked down at my phone. Kirisu had disappeared and my smartphone was back at its home screen. Evidently, Kirisu had hung up.
大学の先輩からだった。
そっか。
I knew I didn't have to hide Kirisu, but at the same time, Mayuri was the one person I didn't want finding out. She knew that I'd failed to save Kirisu Makise last summer.
それで、買うものは決まった
I wonder
か？
if maybe in the next timeline I will actually tell people about Kirisu.
こんな感じでどうかな。
The basket was filled with heart and star-shaped cardstock. This didn't really go with our store's look. But I decided when I started, I was going to let Mayuri make the decisions. Dad might complain later, but I didn't care. He was the one who asked Mayuri for help, not me. And so I went over to the register. Since it was a Saturday, the checkout area was overflowing with shopping carts. Since it was going to take a while, I sent Mayuri to browse the toy section on another floor. I knew they'd have some stuff from one of her favorite shows, Reinet Kakeru. Tips, there we go. Fictional, a very popular manga about the internet that appears in Kokoro Comics. It also has an anime presently in its third season that runs every Sunday at 9 a.m. on East TV stations. While the general atmosphere and character design of the show may make it look like it's for children, its unusually realistic themes make it a show that adults can enjoy as well. Mairi looked apologetic, but did what I told her to. In the end, I waited a whole 15 minutes at the register. As an apology, I decided to get the present I'd promised her. She seemed really happy as she stared at the keychain. Oh, it was Upa, the mascot character from the Rainet Kakeru series. Okay, that's the one, because at first I was thinking it was the Upa that she got in the first Steins Gate. Okay, that one was silver, wasn't it? This one is green. That's the one that she gives to Kagari. Because I was thinking maybe it was green because maybe like it had rusted over time, but this must be the one that Kagari gets. So that's another little bit of a hint of like, he got this thing for Mairi, Mairi's going to keep it. She's going to give it to Kagari in the future. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the same one, right? I told her when she went over to the toy section, she could pick out anything she wanted, and this is what she chose.
ウーパならもう大量に持ってるのに、ずいぶん嬉しそうだな。しかもそれって普通の緑色のウーパだろ？レアなやつじゃないよな。レアなのは確かメタルウーパだっけか。
That's right. Did she not get it in that timeline? Like when I sent it all the way back to the beginning, did I not get that metal Upa for her? The most popular and rarest of the Upas was the shiny silver metal Upa. For example, whenever there was a lottery for rare Rainet Kakeru stuff at the convenience stores, the top prize was always a metal Upa. Mairi had told me once they sold for tens of thousands of yen at auction. For some reason, Mairi was wagging her finger at me.
違うんだな。これはね、緑のウーパさんだけど、普通のとは違うの。この前やってた映画に登場した緑の妖精さんウーパなんだよ。
Come to think of it, there had been a Rainet Kakeru movie out in spring. Had Mairi sat in a theater full of little kids to watch it?
緑の妖精さん？
映画のネタバレしてもいいかな？
いいぞ、どうせ見ないし。
今回の映画はね、バーチャル世界で悪のスーパーハッカーさんたちとバトルをするんだ。そのバーチャル世界が妖精さんの住む森なのです。スーパーハッカーさんはすごく強くてね、かけるくんもウーパもピンチになっちゃうんだけど、もうダメだっていう時にね、妖精さんたちが助けに来てくれるの。実はその妖精さんたちはかけるくんがお世話をしてた学校の花壇のお花さんたちだったんだよ。いつも優しくしてくれるかけるくんを助けるためにね、バーチャル世界でピカピカーンって光ってウーパと合体するんだ。それがこの緑の妖精さんウーパー。すっごくかわいいし、すっごく強いんだよ。まゆし、感動したな。そういう話に弱いんだ。監督さん天才だよ。
なるほどな。
It was rare for Mairi to get this excited about something. I took a closer look and saw the design was a little different from the standard Upa. I didn't know a lot about Upas, so I couldn't say exactly what was different.
このキーホルダーね、結構あちこち探してたんだ。すっごく人気があってね、どこも売り切れだったんだよ。まさかハンズに残ってるなんて思わなかったな。
ラッキーだったな。
うん。しかもこれが最後の1個だったんだよ。今日は来てよかった。オカリンとおじさんには感謝しなくちゃ。
I wonder if like as eventually like Kagari's we're gonna see her at some point. Maybe she'll see the keychain and see Mairi and be like, wait a minute, Mayuri took the tag off the keychain, got her house key out of her bag, and carefully attached it.
ねえ、おかり。
Oh, it's so cute.
まゆし
When she
ね、
says that, she means it. Like, she kept it into 2036. She held on to that thing
大切にす
for
るね。
26 years.
おお、そうしてくれ。くれぐれも買って5分でな
Well,
くしたりしな
25
いよう
years,
に
I
な。
guess. This is 2011. It happened before, after all. There it is, the metal Upa, so she did get it. Like the metal Upa I'd won for her at the radio, but that's right, she dropped it. Mayuri had lost it no more than 5 minutes after I gave it to her. I'd wondered if she had ever found it. I didn't really want to remember that time in my life, so my memory of what happened to the metal Upa was vague.
もう絶対に
Mayuri's so sweet though. Like, she's definitely the type of person, even if she gets like a super rare thing like that that sells for a lot of money, because it was a gift, she would never get rid of it. Like, she treasures it. The two of us started to head back.
おかりんのお店のポップ張り切って作るね。
ああ、その作業があったな。
I'd been thinking the job was done once we bought the materials. The real work actually began now.
俺も手伝おうか。
大丈夫。まゆしのセンスを信じてほしいな。
ハートマークのポップを買おうとしてた時点でセンスを疑うぞ。
大丈夫だよ。
まあ、ポップを作ってくれるだけでもありがたいから文句は言わないけどな。
It's nice to see him actually have a full conversation. I feel like in this game, granted, I know why he's suffering from PTSD and obviously like depressed and stuff, but he hasn't really talked much. Had like full conversations with people that were just something that was just, I don't know, not important, like just everyday chatting about regular stuff. It's nice to see.
お母さんにメールしなきゃ。晩ご飯までには帰りますって。
なんならうちで食べてってもいいぞ。どうせ親父やおふくろが引き止めるだろうし。
どうしようかな。オカリンは今日はこの後ずっと家にいるの？合コンとか行かない？
最近は全然行ってないよ。
Last fall, when I'd been trying to become a normal college kid, I'd forced myself to go to as many as possible. But lately I'd been so busy with my studies, I hadn't had a chance.
そっか。じゃあごちそうになっていこうかな。
Mayuri took out her phone and started to type something when, what's going on? Something's gonna happen. Her expression suddenly darkened. She stopped moving.
どうした？
ついさっきね、楓さんからメールが来てて気づかなかったよ。どうしよう、おかり。
Mayuri seemed like she was on the verge of tears.
何かあったのか？
Did something happen to
おかり、前
Fubuki?
に言ってたよね。
Oh
ふぶ
shit.
きちゃんは病気なんかじゃないって。
ふぶきちゃん？中瀬さんのことか？来島さんの方じゃなくて？
あれって本当？
Oh no, did they like take people
本当に病気じゃないん
away?
だよね。
Everyone who is suffering from that disease, like did the government come or like somebody come and just like take them away from the hospital?
おう、違
Or
う
are
は
they
ず
gonna
だ。
keep them there indefinitely?
でも
Uh-oh. What? Mayuri showed me her phone. Fubuki's back in the hospital. I'm on my way. Here's the location. Oh, I didn't realize that she was out of the hospital.
また入院しただって？
I couldn't believe what I was seeing on the screen. Fubuki was at a different location than before. This time, it was the AH Tokyo General Hospital High-Tech Medical Center in Yoyogi. To be fair, there's been quite a time skip, so I guess she was let out of the hospital, then brought back in. It was supposedly one of Japan's most advanced hospitals. According to what I'd read on the internet, patients with the new encephalitis that everyone was talking about were being gathered here for special treatment. But I'd also read lots of really bad urban legends about the place, and I was a bit worried about what kind of horror show I'd find there. Urban legend, rumors whose source is unknown or unclear, usually dating from the 20th century or later. They can be divided into ghost stories, occult stories, and folklore, but lately the boundaries between these three categories have become vague. Urban legends range from short, silly stories to the terrifying and nightmarish, and all of them are told as if they really happened. Examples of urban legends include the Japanese story of Hanako-san, the stories about the shadow people, or the story of the men in black. But of course, when we arrived, it was nothing like that. It was very clean and decorated like a luxury hotel.
Mayuri-chan! Hokari-san! こっちです。
Kaede and Yuki waved to us as we entered the lobby. Yuki had gotten a message from Kaede as well, and had evidently come right over.
ふぶきちゃんは大丈夫だよ。
Yuki gave Mayuri a soft hug and a smile. Kaede bowed her head apologetically.
驚かせてごめんね。私も焦っちゃって。もっとちゃんと確認してからメールすればよかった。
というと、中瀬さんの容体は？
今、病室でふぶきちゃんのお母さんに会えたんですけど、例の病気が悪化したとかじゃないそうです。
じゃあ、また検査入院とか？
はい、そう言ってました。だから全然心配ないって。
Except he knows that that's not the case. Maybe not right now, but in the future for sure.
なんだ。
Mayuri looked extremely relieved as Yuki continued to hug her. If I remembered right, the last time they examined her, they said it was possible she had the disease, but as long as it didn't get worse, it wouldn't affect her daily life. They just told her to come back for regular checkups. The new encephalitis had arrived in Japan over 6 months ago, but the number of patients were still increasing. Fortunately, there hadn't been a single casualty yet.
あれは病気なんかじゃないと思うけどな。
I was certain that what they were calling encephalitis was actually something similar to reading Steiner. One time when I went to visit Fubuki in the hospital, I had secretly investigated the other patients. I wasn't able to get any proof, but I found out most of the patients in her wing had, to varying degrees, memories of the same worldline. Many people had memories of Japan at war.
ふぶきちゃんに会えるかな。それがね、今 MRI で脳の検査をしている最中なんですって。だから病室にいないの。そうなんだ。でももう少しで終わるみたいよ。ここで待っていてってふぶきちゃんのお母さんが。
Kaede motioned to Mayuri, indicating she should sit down at a nearby sofa.
検査が終わったら声をかけてくれるみたい。
I let the girls sit down on the sofa and stood next to them while I surveyed the lobby.
すごい病院ですよね。
ああ、中瀬さんの家って実はすごい金持ちだったりするのか？こんなところに入院なんて。
いえ、そうじゃなくってですね。ふぶきちゃんのお母さんの話だと、日本とアメリカの政府がお金を出して新しい治療のプロジェクトを始めるみたいなんです。この病院とアメリカの専門病院や研究所が中心になってやるんだそうですよ。
そうなのか。
I wasn't sure how I felt about that. If I was right about what this disease really was, it was hard to imagine a bigger waste of money.
お願いします。患者は全員個室にしてください。それも患者同士が接触しないよう、なるべく離れた部屋で。
しかしね、そんな都合よく病床は空いていませんから。
それでもやってくれないとダメです。患者同士が会話をすることで夢の情報を共有してしまうでしょ
いや、それはそうですが。
脳というのはね、他人が見た夢なのにそれに共感を覚えてしまうと、あたかも自分が見た夢のように錯覚してしまう。そういう可能性だって あるのです。
Ah. Ah. I can't believe I didn't recognize the voice. Oh my god. You. That means that Maho's around here. Across the lobby, I saw an old Japanese doctor in a white coat and a big man in a suit who was frantically trying to talk to him. I'd seen the man in the suit before. No, stay away from him. Actually, it was a man I knew well.
教授レスキネン教授
I hurried over.
レスキネン教授俺です岡部です
He must have been wearing his translator because he was communicating with the old doctor in Japanese. Dr. Leskinen's face quickly broke into a smile when he saw me.
Oh, Rintaro!
I'm really bummed out, actually, that this guy is, like, kind of the villain. Because I like the idea of just, like, kind of a golden retriever of a professor who is just, like, you know, you think that he'd be all stern and serious, but he's actually quite the opposite. And then it turns out, like, his young students, or I guess, like, would you call them his students? I guess they're kind of like his coworkers in a way, too. Like, that are in their teens and their early 20s are actually much more mature than him. His voice was so loud everyone in the lobby, doctors, nurses, staff, and even the patients turned to look at me. But Dr. Leskinen didn't seem to notice them as he ran over. He was like a giant American football player racing for a touchdown.
うわちょっと待ってください教授ストップストップ
I know they keep saying like he's American, and he's American, but I'm like, I don't know, like, what was his name? Like Alexei or Alexis Leskinen. I'm like, to me that sounds like a Russian name. My cries went unheard as Dr. Leskinen tackled me and pulled me up. Then he switched from football player to pro wrestler and swung me up and down. I felt like I was a little child. There was nothing I could do to resist him as he flung me around. A moment later, he noticed the cold stares of the people around us and finally released me.
いやはや、すまない。あまりに驚いて、はしゃぎすぎてしまった。
Dr. Leskinen bowed to the people around him in apology.
レスキネン先生、この青年とはどういったお知り合いかな？
The doctor that Professor Leskinen had been talking to was staring at me suspiciously.
あその
I wasn't sure exactly what to tell him. It wasn't like he was really my professor.
見たところまだ学生のようだが、どこの大学かね？教授と同じ脳科学専攻だとすると。
いえ俺は
彼は9月からビクトゥ・コンドリア大学の学生です
Oh
よ。
no, Okabe,
い
he's
ず
be
れ
like, yes, this
私
is
の
what I
研究
wanted.
室
He
に
doesn't
来て
realize
もらう
this
つ
is a
もりでい
trap.
ます。
え
おほう、ビクトル・コンドリア大学かね。
Kondoria.
これは
I'm just
驚
gonna
いた
keep calling it Victor University. That's easier for me. I looked over at Dr. Leskinen questioningly, but he just gave me a mischievous smile. This guy, he really was such a kid.
日本人であそこへ行ける学生なんてめったにいない。大したものだ。
どうも
After the doctor left, I sighed loudly enough for Professor Leskinen to hear me.
今の人は
この病院の院長だよ。
院長そんな偉い人相手に堂々と嘘をついたんですか？
おや、私は嘘なんてついたかな？確かに9月から我が校の学生とは言ったが、何も今年の9月からとは言ってないよ。それとも何かい？君は結局我が校に来る自信がないのかな？だったら少し残念だが。
He really was like a little kid, completely shameless. But still, it was hard to hate him.
でも驚きました。まさか教授がまた日本に来ているなんて。
It had been 5 months since I'd seen him off at Narita.
魔法も一緒に来ているよ。
そうなんですか？一言も教えてもらってませんが。
Probably because she wasn't allowed to now that she knows something's up, but I wonder if he threatened her, be like, you can't say anything to Okabe, you don't reach out to him, don't tell him what's going on. I talked to her often via email and video chat, mostly about Amadeus' testing, but she hadn't said a word about coming to Japan. I hadn't heard anything about it from Kirisu either.
またあの和光市の武装のオフィスだよ。クリスと一緒にいつでも遊びに来るといい。泥棒に入られるから別の場所にしてくれと訴えたんだがね。
Dr. Leskinen looked up toward the ceiling and shrugged. It did feel like that place had security issues.
リンタールはどこか具合でも悪いのかい？治療でここに？
ああ、いえ、違います。入院してる友人の見舞いで。
ああ、そうか。それはよか。いや、
I was
そ
like,
の友
really,
人に
is
とっ
it?
ては
No.
良くないか。申し訳ない。
ああ、いえ。それで、教授こそ、日本の病院で何を？
Dr. Leskinen brought his face close to mine and whispered so people around us couldn't hear him.
君も知っているだろう。例の新型脳炎の件だよ。アメリカ政府の依頼で精神生理学研究所が治療法を研究していたんだが手詰まりらしくてね。私も調査に加わるよう大学から命じられたというわけさ。
そうなんですか。レスキネン教授が新型脳炎を。
Now, there was a word I didn't expect to hear. Now, we have to not let him know that we have those same things. He's got to keep it to himself. I explained my friend was here because they thought she might have the disease.
もしかしてその友人というのは中瀬克美？
ああ、クリスマスパーティーで会ってましたね。
Oh, shoot, he would have seen me do the same thing, so he probably has an inkling that maybe I'm suffering from the same disease. But then he's gonna be like, I wonder why you didn't end up going for treatment.
実は私が新型
I
の
don't,
目
I
に
didn't
興味を
even
持っ
think
た
about
の
that,
も
that Leskinen was there
party
for
が
that he
きっか
saw
けでね。
Fubuki and myself, seem to be affected by something at the
君
same
と
time.
克美が
Yeah, right?
揃って倒れただろ？
He was right, actually. In my case, I'd been sent to the other world line.
克美には何日か前に再会したんだけどね。私にも
Yeah, it
何度
was
か噛
strange
み
that
ついてきたよ
when。that happened, I didn't
ど
go
う
to
し
the
てまた
hospital
入院
either,
させ
but
られ
it's
るんだ？
probably because everybody else
私
knew.
は元気なのにってね。
Well, not everybody, but most of the people at the party knew about reading Steiner, so they probably was like, oh, you should probably keep that to yourself. But Suzuha was the only one who brought up the fact that she suspected that I jumped into a world line or I saw a world line when I collapsed.
そうでしたか。
もう少し協力的になってくれると嬉しいとリンタロウからも伝えておいてくれないかい？
ああ、
実際のところキャツミだけでなく全ての患者に申し訳ないという気持ちはあるんだ。我々も日本の医師団も研究を進めてはいるんだけどね。どうにも解せない検査結果ばかりで困り果てているのさ。
Dr. Leskinen's usually chipper expression darkened. The man was such a ball of vitality that I hadn't noticed until then, but when his smile disappeared, I could see the wrinkles that had formed on his face from exhaustion. He must be working hard, like he said.
正直、最初はどの医師もこれほど不可解な病気だとは思っていなかったらしいんだけどね。ん？どうしたんだ、リンタロウ？
あ、その、
何か気になることでも？
いえ、俺は医学生じゃないのでさっぱりです。
I was about to tell him about my reading Steiner, but in the end, I couldn't. My uninformed opinion was wrong. It could cost the why can't I do this word? Encephalitis patients their lives. I couldn't just tell him when I didn't have any proof. And then his face drew close to mine again.
ところで、その克美がなかなか興味深いことを言っていたん
Did
だ
she
よ。
rat me out? Did she say that I also experienced it?
自分たちは病気じゃない。別の世界の出来事を夢で見る能力があるだけだ。と
Oh
か
no.
なんとか。
I told her not to say anything about it. Could she not help it? This was bad. They might start to doubt her sanity.
中瀬さんはとても想像力がたくましいというか SF とかアニメとか大好きですから、他の平行世界を感知できる力なんて多分趣味の影響で口にしただけじゃないかと思います。
Here's the thing too is Dr. Leskinen, he kind of forced Maho to put her memories into her AI, so I'm sure he saw the fact that Maho now is like thinking about time machines and other world lines and stuff, and then she knows that, she's been talking to me. Maybe he's made that connection that, like, I talked to Fubuki about that, I talked to Maho about that. So many things that could be going on here. Parallel world, another world which exists parallel to our own in another space-time. It has the same dimensions as our own world, and sometimes the people and objects within it are the exact same place as our own.
実は俺もそういうことを言っていた時期があるんですよ。
I tried my best to come up with excuses, but Dr. Leskinen still seemed concerned.
だけどね、私も治療プロジェクトに参加して驚いたんだが、確かにこの病の特徴として多くの患者が夢を共有する不可思議な現象が起こっているんだ。集団幻覚に近いのかとも思って今調べているんだけどね。でもなんだろう、こんなことは初めてでね。脳科学的には今のところ解が導けない。正直非科学的という言葉が一番しっくりくるくらいだよ。それこそ平行世界とか前世の記憶とかね。
そうですか。
君も克美からいろいろと話を聞いてくれると助かるよ。医者に言えないことでも友人になら話すだろうしね。
はい、一応心がけておきます。
さて、リンタロウ、それはそれとして確認だ。
Dr. Leskinen was looking over my shoulder.
クリスマスパーティーの時にも感じたんだけれど、君のガールフレンドたちはキュートなお嬢さんばかりだね。
Hey, old man. Keep it to yourself.
え？
I love how somebody's finally calling out the fact that he just is surrounded by cute girls. It's like, how does a dude like Okabe, he just, even when he was like Hoi and Kiyoma, he just seemed to attract like all of these cute girls around him. I turned around and saw Mayuri, Kaede, and Yuki had all stood up from the sofa and were looking at me. When they saw Dr. Leskinen was looking at them, they waved.
やはりあの中に恋人がいた
No,
りするのか
don't
い
you say single.
ユキ、楓、
Okay, I thought he was going to say single.
Luca?
It's like,
それとも
sir.
克美がそうなのかな
But Luca's a guy.
No.
His words were so surprising, I couldn't think of anything to say. Maho would often call this middle-aged man a mischievous boy, and that was exactly the look he had on his face.
いや、別に無理に聞かせてくれとは言わないよ。君のプライベートを詮索する気はないからね。ただ、まあ、可愛い教え子にちょっとした土産話をと思っただけさ。
Dr. Leskinen turned to walk away before I could figure out what he meant.
それじゃリンタロウ、私はもうちょっと院長と話をしないといけないから、これで。できればユキたちにも一人一人発揮していきたいところだったが、次回にとっておこう。彼女たちによろしく。
はい。
And I'll just be like, I'm American. That's what we do. We give hugs. We're very touchy-feely like that. Japanese, not so much from what I've heard. I was like, that'd be a little strange. I think that'd be weird anyway. Like, they literally met this man one time, and then he's like, oh, I want to give him hugs. Mayuri and the others came over to me as I watched him go.
今の人レスキネン先生ですよね。どこかで見たことあると思った。 アメリカに帰ったんじゃなかったでしたっけ？オカリン？
There was no way I could tell the girls what Dr. Leskinen and I were just talking about. After Fubuki's exam was over, we went to her room and listened to her complain, and then the visit was over. Just like Dr. Leskinen had said, she looked just fine. She told us she was ready to leave the hospital and jog all the way home. Meyer and the others were relieved, but I felt worried. Did I need to talk to Dr. Leskinen about reading Steiner after all? But how would I explain it? It might be a better idea to talk to Maho and have her explain it to him. I couldn't come to an answer right away. It was a very hot day in 1998 when Suzuha had said goodbye to Kagari Shina. She'd gone to get food and water from a local store, and when she'd come back and opened the hatch, Kagari was inside screaming. Was that when she pointed the gun at me? She looked inside and saw that Kagari was slamming her tiny hands down on the control console.
お前、何をしてるんだ?
I feel like we're not really going to get much insight into Kagari more until at least, like, the second or third routes. Kagari shrank back when she saw Suzuha.
違うの。これは、その。答えろ。なんて。目を覚ましたら、鈴葉お姉ちゃんがいなくて、真っ暗で明かりもつかないし、狭くて怖くて苦しくて。だから、かがり、ドアを開けたくて。それで、あちこちいじってるうちに、こんなことに。
Kagari started to cry.
ごめんなさい、鈴葉お姉ちゃん。ごめんなさい。でも、本当に怖かったんだ。だから。そうか。
Suzuha relaxed her guard. Kagari had PTSD from her time as a war orphan, and she hadn't fully recovered yet. Mayuri had once told her she got very frightened in dark and cramped places. I feel like most people would. You just wake up in a, sealed little thing, and the person you're with is gone, especially if they're the only person you know. I think most people would probably freak out. It makes sense if waking up in the dark caused a panic attack. And the time machine could only function with Suzuha's biometric authorization. Someone of Kagari's size wouldn't be able to break the console either.
お前は時間移動のショックで気を失ってたんだよ。だから休ませておいたんだけど、悪かった。
Suzuha grabbed one of Kagari's tiny hands to help her up, and then led her outside the machine.
暑い。かがり、約束するんだ。どんなことがあっても、操縦席のスイッチに触ったりするな。いいな。じゃあ、私は仕事にかかるから、お前はその辺で休んでるんだ。飲み物と食べ物は適当に食べていい。
Suzuha handed Kagari the provision she'd brought, then went inside and poked her head into the cargo space under the control console. She connected the IBN 5100 she'd stored there to a portable terminal she'd brought from the future. By all appearances, it was an early 2000 cell phone, but inside it was a miniaturized quantum computer from the year 2036. Of course, Future Daru had made it himself. When she booted up the IBN 5100, rows of numbers started to appear on the screen.
何をするの?
Kagari was looking in from outside the machine.
2000年問題は勉強したか?
Year 2000 problem. A problem where old computers would supposedly have errors after the year 2000. Almost all old computers stored only the last 2 digits of the year in order to save memory. For this reason, when 1999 became 2000, the computer's data would change from 99 to 0. Since the programs were never equipped to handle this, it was thought that computers would treat the year 1900 and malfunction. While an error with a home user's computer would not be a severe issue, a malfunction in a medical, financial, or military computer could cause disaster. For this reason, all these programs across the world were rewritten by hand starting in the mid-1990s. The process was successful, and January 1st, 2000 came and went without serious incident. This is wild to me because I remember this. Like, I remember this on the news. I remember people, like, talking about this. I was pretty young. I was 10. Well, I guess I would have been 9, because, like, going into the year 2000. But, like, old enough that I remember this. It was a really big deal. It's pretty crazy. And also crazy how long ago that was.
施設の学校でちょっとだけ結局何にも起こらなかったんでしょ。表向きはね。公表されてないけど、実は当時あれのせいでいくつかの地域や国に深刻な問題が起きたんだ。そうなの？問題だったのはこの IBN5100 というコンピューターなんだよ。これには古いプログラム言語が搭載されてるんだけど、そのプログラムの問題点を技術者たちが修正できなかった。というより、そんな言語で書かれた重大なプログラムが存在すること自体全く知られてなかった。第三次世界大戦はタイムマシンの開発競争が発端なんだけど、もしかすると2000年問題で発生したある事象とそれに付随する対立こそがもっと深い原因である可能性がある。
She didn't expect a 10-year-old like Kagari to understand this, but she didn't feel like taking the time to explain.
しかも西暦2000年というのは特殊な年でね、すべての世界線が一旦一つに収束してしまうらしいんだ。それに関連してこの問題があらゆる世界線の因果に重大な影響を引き起こすかもしれない。私たちが目指してる狭間の世界線、シュタインズゲートも例外じゃない。
She looked down at the terminal connected to the IBN 5100.
だからこれは2000年問題を起こさないようにするための修正プログラムなんだよ。
Right now, the terminal was converting the patch into the language used by the IBN 5100. The next step was to spread this program all around the world in the form of a virus, and the year 2000 problems that this era's engineers missed would completely disappear. The word connect appeared on the terminal's subscreen.
OK。つながった。
She'd been told that in Japan in this era, ADSL was still in the test phase, and most normal users connected to the internet by low-speed dial-up using ISDN. But in major city areas like Akihabara, universities, labs, and some big computer companies were starting to use fiber optic broadband. Some of them were even using wireless LANs. Alright, got a couple of things here. Wireless LAN, a method of connecting to the internet and sending and receiving data without the use of a cable, fiber optic broadband. A high-speed, high-capacity internet connection that uses optical fiber, also called FTTH, fiber to the home. Instead of relying on existing telephone lines, it requires the construction of new communication networks. For this reason, adoption has taken longer than ADSL. As of 2010, 35% of Japan uses FTTH. Suzuha cracked her way into one of those. Dad had laughed when he'd said that with 2036 technology, cracking late 20th century network security was a joke, but he'd been right.
でも未来を変えちゃったら、かがりたちがいた未来の世界も全然変わっちゃうんじゃないの？
Is this when Kagari pointed that gun at me? Surprisingly, Kagari had gotten the gist of what Suzuha had just told her.
そういうことだ。もうあの世界は存在させない。
Is she gonna be like, but then I never meet
私
my
たちは
mom?
シュタインズゲートを目指すために
Or
こ
she
こへ
might
来たん
know
だから。
she wouldn't exist. That's the whole thing, yeah. Kagari probably wouldn't exist in that world line because she's 10 as of 2036. Suddenly, the uneasy look on Kagari's face vanished. It was as if her soul had left its body. Suddenly, her face was expressionless, and her eyes were wide.
声、
Voice.
神様の声、
Oh no.
聞こえる。
Oh no. That's probably what that dude, the guy who was shooting at Okabe and Maho, like he was speaking scripture, wasn't he? He was talking like he was speaking like from the Bible or something like that.
かがり？ダメだよ。 よくないよ。
And just like with the guy, she pointed a gun at Suzuha.
ダメなんだよ、鈴葉お姉ちゃん。そんなことしちゃいけないんだ。おい。
Kagari was acting strangely. Suspiciously, Suzuha reached her hand out towards her. But she slipped past Suzuha's hand, and quicker than any child should be able to move, she slammed her shoulder straight into Suzuha's body. Suzuha was caught completely off guard. That's how fast it was. Kagari's shoulder hit her in the solar plexus. She bent over and collapsed onto the seat. Kagari tore the terminal out of Suzuha's hands. Oh shit, the cables connecting it to the IBN 5100 were ripped out, and errors displayed on both screens.
お前、何を?
Kagari didn't answer the question. Instead, she grabbed the backpack Suzuha had placed on the seat and spilled its contents onto the floor. There were MREs, spare parts, clothes, and a semi-automatic pistol. Suzuha couldn't believe it. Kagari was going to try and pick it up.
やめろ!
She forced herself to ignore the pain as she jumped on Kagari's body. Who is this kid, though? But another unbelievably powerful body slam knocked her back. Like, this is not a normal 10-year-old. What the hell? Something cold was pushed right up against her brow.
動いちゃダメ.
Kagari's tiny hands weren't shaking at all as they clutched the semi-automatic pistol. In the space of an instant, the safety on the gun had been flipped off. Like, I know she's a war orphan. They're harder than normal kids, but this still seems sus. We should have never brought this kid with us. That is when Suzuha realized this wasn't just a temper tantrum. Suzuha was the one who taught her how to use a gun. Ah, that's why she knew that Kagari was perfectly calm.
正気か? 今すぐ銃を下ろせ。こんな真似はやめろ。やめるのはお姉ちゃんの方だよ。何? 世界を変えちゃいけないんだ。お姉ちゃんはおかしいこと言ってる。
There was no hesitation in her eyes. Instead, Suzuha saw only resolve. So she said that there were the markings of gun holes or something. So I'm guessing that Suzuha probably pushed the gun away just as she fired it.
じゃあ、このまま戦争が起きてもいいっていうのか? そんなのわかんないよ。かがりは元の世界に戻りたいだけだもん。なら、もう無理だ。私たちはタイムマシンですでに過去に干渉してる。世界線だってずれてしまってるはずだ。あそこに戻れる可能性は低く。うるさいうるさいうるさい。かがりはママを絶対に助けるんだ。この世界を消すなんてダメだよ。絶対にやらせないから。
Kagari turned the gun towards the IBN 5100.
やめろ!
Before Suzuha could stop her, she yanked down on the trigger, again and again.
やめてくれ、かがり! やめろ!
And then Kagari jumped out of the time machine, and Suzuha never saw her again. Well, alright, I'm glad that we got a little bit more insight into exactly how that went down. And yeah, losing the 5100, that's a pretty big blow. On every night that passed, she remembered Kagari. Suzuha had spent some time looking for Kagari when she'd first come to this era, but in the end, she'd never found anything. But Kagari Shina, who is now 22 years old, was here in Akihabara. Okay, 22 years old. So that would be about kind of the same age as, like, the girls that Mayuri would hang out with. So maybe they'll come across her at some point. Suzuha was sure of it, but it did no good to keep thinking about it. So Suzuha decided to stop thinking and look around the room. Itaru, her dad, was playing yet another game populated entirely with female characters. His jaw was slack and he was scratching the belly fat that stuck out from under his shirt as he played. There wasn't much to respect in him right now, either as a father or as a person, damn. How is
そうい
the
えば、
how is the
お母さんとはうま
dating
くやれてる？
going with Yuki? Did you end up going on that movie date? It has been 6 months, right? Exactly. How are things with the mom?
な、
大丈夫？私が生まれてこなくなるような事態にならないよね。
なんつうの？タイムマシンよりもなんだい？
ちょっと。
Suzuha stormed over to Itaru.
困るよ、父さん。
うん。パパ、頑張るからね。
いっつも口ばっかり。結局、例の映画のチケットも無駄にしちゃったんでしょ？
She meant the pair of movie tickets Myri and Ferris had conspired to give them at the Christmas party.
あれはさ、オカリンと吹雪氏が倒れちゃったじゃん。その後、お見舞いとかでバタバタしてるうちに映画が終わっちゃってたわけで、しょうがないっつうか。
でもその後、新しいチケットを用意しようとしたら断ったって聞いたけど。
誰に？
まゆ姉さんとルミ姉さんに決まってるじゃないか。
そりゃあれだお。マユシとフェイリスターに頼りきりなんて男らしくないっしょ。キリ。
で、自分で何か行動に移したわけ？ダメだこれ。
Maybe this was a more important problem than the time machine. Suzuha brought her hands up to her head.
いい父さん。私、いつまでもこうやってお説教でき
Yeah,
ないん
she's
だからね。
leaving soon, isn't she? That's right.
もうすぐ行っちゃうんだよ。
Very soon. And not much has happened. Suddenly, there was a sad look in Itaru's eyes.
そういう顔しない。約束したはずだよ。もう迷うのはやめにしようって。
For the past 6 months, Suzuha had been thinking about whether it was really right to erase this world. But in the end, it was none other than Itaru who pushed her to go ahead.
ごめん。
She couldn't bear to see her father so depressed, so she patted his broad back.
しょぼくれてないで、母さんにメールして。予定の空いてる日がないか聞いて。
Suzuha, I think you're gonna have to take his phone and you're gonna have to take control, because he's not gonna do shit.
空いてたら映画に誘う。
いきなりハードル高すぎ。
高すぎでも何でもいいから誘いなさい。いい？これは命令だからね。
命令って。
返事は？
さあ、イエスさあ。
Satisfied, she headed off to take a shower.
でもその前にちょっとだけコンビニに行ってくる。にらまないで。なるべく太らないようなものを食べますんで、何卒お許しを。
バニラ。
はい。
私、シャワー出たらアイス食べたい。バニラ。
わかった。庶民がなかなか口にできない高級なやつをいっぱい買ってきてあげる。
いっぱいはいらないよ。一つでいい。
さあ、イエス
That was enough to cheer Daru up. He took his wallet and ran out of the lab. Please let Daru be safe. Like, I don't know how much more of this there's going to be. I feel like there's a lot of loose ends that need to be tied up, but that is what playing the other routes are probably going to do. But considering that Suzuha's leaving soon, like, I'm not sure how much more of this there is. So I feel like these characters, like, if Daru's caught up in this, if the Russian government knows that, like, Daru was trying to hack Kirisu's laptop, like, are they gonna kidnap him? What's gonna happen? Like, the fact that he's running off on his own, like, oh gosh, please let him be okay.
やれやれ。世話がかかるんだから。
She had just about taken off her jacket so she could take that shower, but...
鈴葉。
Itaru had come back into the lab.
どうかした？
階段のところにさ、こんなの落ちてたんだよね。
Uh-oh, what's this? Oh! Itaru showed her a keychain he was holding. It was a round anime character. That's Kagari. Right? Mayuri wouldn't just leave that unless it like somehow fell off of her. But she never made it. I don't know. I don't know when this is happening, but I'm guessing this is Kagari leaving a thing saying like, hey, I'm around. I know where you are. It was a round anime character whose color had faded. So it's an old one. Yes. Okay. Kagari is hanging around here, knows where Suzuha is. I don't know if this is a threat. I don't know if she's threatening her with this, or if it's a thing like, hey, I'm around. I don't want to see you, but I'm okay. It was an Upa.
誰のかわかる？
まゆ姉さんじゃないの？
She leaned forward to take a closer look, and then felt like she was experiencing déjà vu.
このウーパー、どこかで。
Suzuha's been having that a lot, but I guess when you time travel, that's gonna happen. You're gonna feel déjà vu. It's like the whole thing with the song that Yuki was singing, the Upa. She'd seen it before. She couldn't really remember when, but her internal alarms were going off. This keychain was extremely important. Upas were common enough you could find them anywhere. The plastic edges had worn down, the paint was faded and coming off in places. But there was no dust and there was no stains. Instead, it shone brightly as if its owner had put a lot of effort into taking good care of it. The chain was so old that part of it had snapped off. That was probably how it got dropped.
どこだっただろう。どこかで見た。
まゆしに見せてもらったとか？
Or maybe Kagari, like, didn't know that it had fallen. Maybe she's been spying on it here and this just ended up being left behind.
そうなのかな。
I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop for her to realize where she knows it from. She stared at the green Upa in Itaru's hands, and then in her mind, she heard a young girl's scream. There we go.
ママがずっと大切にしてきたウーパのキーホルダーだよ。かがりちゃんにあげる。大事にしてね。
She gasped. A feeling of indescribable terror raced down her spine.
まさか。
I mean, considering that Kagari, the last time they interacted, she pointed a gun at her and is trying to stop Suzuha from changing the world line. I feel like Kagari wasn't there to just have a friendly chat. I feel like this is more either a warning or like this was she just left it accidentally while she was here spying.
かがりのか。
That was when she'd last seen it. August 13th, 2036. The day she'd gone into the time machine. That's when she'd seen this Upa. It was older and more worn now, but the more she remembered that day, the more certain she became. This was the Upa Mayuri had given to Kagari. She'd seen Kagari holding it and crying to herself many times before.
かがりってもしかして未来のまゆしの娘？
うん。
見つかったん？
いや。でも向こうはこっちを認識しているんだ。
つまりどういうことだってばよ。
あいつこのラボを監視してるんだよ。
Satisfied, she headed off to take a shower. Ever since then, her careful efforts to defend the time machine had paid off, and she hadn't seen any sign of Kagari. But she never thought that she would be watching the lab.
いや、ちょっと考えれば当たり前のことだったんだ。あいつは私たちがシュタインズゲートに到達するのを阻止しようとしてる。この世界をなかったことにしたくないと思ってる。ということは、私だけじゃなく、父さんもマークされてる。
え？僕？
まあ、父さんの命に危険はないとは思うんだ。
Oh, I'm wondering if the person who sent that, because Daru said like he got an address or a map or something sent to him, and that's when he knew like he had to go and see when Suzuha was pointing the gun at Okabe, so I'm guessing that was probably Kagari who knew that that was happening. She couldn't reveal herself, so she told Daru, or she sent that thing to Daru saying like, hey, this is happening, because she knew that Daru was going to stop Suzuha from forcing Okabe to go back in time.
世界線の摂理を信じるなら、父さんは少なくとも2036年までは生きるはずだし、ただシュタインズゲート到達を阻止するために父さんの研究の邪魔はしてくるかもしれない。
A lot of bad things had been happening around Suzuha, Itaru, and Rintaro Okabe. There was some possibility the final target was Itaru.
これからは用心のために、私がいない時には必ずドアに鍵をかけておいて。
わかったお。
オカリンおじさんや母さんやマユ姉さんたちが一緒にいても絶対に開けっぱなしはダメだよ。気休めかもしれないけどドアチェーンもかけた方がいい。
でもさ、オカリンやマユシならともかくアマネシと二人きりの時にそんなことしたらなんか別の意味で怪しくね。アマネシに変な誤解されないかな。
それは確かに。
もしそれで嫌われでもしたら我が家のピンチだお。
Yeah, that would be a little concerning if he's alone with Yuki and then all of a sudden he just goes and locks the door. Especially if it's just someone I'm hanging out with casually. I was like, yeah, that would definitely set off alarm bells in my head too. Suzuha groaned softly, unsure of what to do.
父さんがもっと早く母さんと恋人になってれば何の問題もないのに。
で、結局そこへ話が戻るとか？
とにかく注意だけはしておいてよね。
Suzuha decided to keep the green Upa keychain. She softly ran her fingertips over it as she stared at it.
なあ鈴葉、かがりたんって血はつながってないけどマユシの娘なんだよね。
そうだよ。
あのマユシに育ててもらった子が人を襲うような恐ろしい人間になるのかな。なんか鈴葉の話とイメージが重ならないっつうか、もっと優しくてホワホワしてて可愛い女の子になってるんじゃないかなとか思ったり。
だとよかったんだけど。私も前はそうなると信じてたけど今のかがりは多分。
I wonder if she's around Mayuri, because I'm assuming if she's watching the lab, she knows Mayuri comes in. She must know that that's her mom, and she'd never hurt her mom. I would assume she wouldn't. So maybe she's gonna like entrench herself in Mayuri's life. I'm assuming none of the girls look like Kagari, so I'm assuming none of them are secretly Kagari. But maybe there's a case where it's like, maybe she's just kind of watching Mayuri, or in like casual contact with her. But similar to kind of like with Suzuha pretending to be Daru's sister, she's obviously not going to be like, hey, I'm your future adopted daughter. From what she'd seen at the radio building, she could tell Kagari had definitely received professional combat training. It wasn't just the simple self-defense techniques she'd learned from Suzuha when she was a child. As she'd grown up, she had been taught the cold techniques of a killer. There was no way to know where she'd been, or what she'd been doing, ever since she'd gone missing in 1998. But there was no doubt in Suzuha's mind that she was trying to ruin her plans. Suzuha sighed as she took her shower. Since it was summer, she'd set the water temperature low. It was barely any hotter than tap water. As long as the water was pouring down on her, she could feel like all the bad memories were being washed away. She slapped her cheeks with both hands and turned off the water. The small tiled room suddenly became quiet. In the silence, she vigorously toweled off her hair. This building was never intended for anyone to live in. Not only was there very little room, there wasn't even a place to change. It was small and there were no windows, and the steam from the shower room built up, making it an unpleasant sauna in summer. Supposedly, Itaru and Okabe would sit naked next to the fans to get away from the heat and moisture. Of course, that was only when the girls, as well as Luca, weren't around. But Suzuha couldn't do that. There were these huge scars on her chest. If she was careless and Yuki saw them, she'd have a big problem. So she always forced herself to change within this small space. The second she left the shower room, she realized something was wrong. The lights were off in the part behind the curtain where the lab room was. She was sure she'd left all the lab lights on when she'd gone to take a shower. She didn't remember turning them off. Ooh, are we going to get to see grown-up Kagari? See what she looks like? Still completely naked, she flung open the curtain. She dropped to the floor, ready to move. She could tell by the light from the shower room that there was no one else there. She didn't hear any breathing. She didn't feel any other presence.
父さんが一度戻ってきたのか。
And then when he'd left, he turned off the lights? No, that couldn't be right. She looked around the room and saw that things had been moved in a way that an amateur wouldn't be able to notice. Itaro's computer desk, the sofa area, the bookshelves, even the mini-kitchen, someone had gone through them all. From the look of it, the same was probably true of the development room. Suzuha glanced all over the areas where she kept her guns. The closest was the sofa she used as a bed. She'd wanted to have one easily available if she was attacked while she slept, so she'd cut out the back of one of the sofa cushions and hidden a suppressed semi-automatic pistol into it. It was just a 32 caliber for self-defense, so it wouldn't do much damage unless you had good aim. But it was small and relatively quiet, which made it the best choice for a place like this. Suzuha tensed all her muscles, coiling like a spring, and slowly moved towards the sofa without making a sound. As she did, she tried to notice any changes in the surrounding area. There was a small sound in the development room. It was a tiny, tiny creaking of the floor to which you'd usually pay no mind. But that was more than enough for Suzuha. I wouldn't be surprised. It's just Yuki again. She's like constantly almost attacking Yuki. And she's also naked too. In an instant, she moved from quiet to action. She cleared the distance to the sofa in an instant and quickly drew her gun. She held it ready and slipped into the shadow of the refrigerator. From this position, she could barely see into the development room. Yep, that's the person who attacked her or who was spying on her when she was checking out the time machine with Ferris. The room became silent again, but this time the intruder in the other room didn't try to hide their presence.
おかしな真似をしたら撃つ。手を頭の上に。そのままゆっくり出てこい。
Suzuha threatened the intruder in a low voice, but the intruder seemed completely unconcerned as they exposed themselves to Suzuha's gaze.
この暑いのによくそんな格好をしていられるな。ヘルメットだけでも取ったらどうだ？
The intruder was wearing a motorcycle suit, just like before. Even the helmet was the same. The leather suit clung tight to their skin, revealing a voluptuous and perfectly proportioned body. Why are we talking about this right now? It was clearly a woman.
あんたが探してるものだけどね。そこにはないよ。私の服のポケットだ。
Suzuha pointed toward the entrance to the shower room. The shirt she had just taken off was lying there on the floor. The girl in the motorcycle suit turned her head, but because the face mask was down, Suzuha couldn't read her expression.
なあ、落としたらダメじゃないか。ママからもらった大切なものだろ。かがり。
The second she spoke, yep, so it was an accident. So she was... that was an oopsie on her part. The second she spoke, Kagari Shina was the first to move. She drew a deglossed military knife that she must have been hiding behind her back and closed the gap between herself and Suzuha in an instant. Suzuha pointed the gun at her legs and pulled the trigger, carefully aiming away from her vitals. She heard the small pop of a suppressed 32 and saw Kagari lose her balance and fall. Or, she thought she did, but it was a feint. She'd only pretended to lose her balance. In fact, she'd changed direction and was heading for the shower room. It seemed her first goal was to get what she'd come for.
これは
After firing only one shot, Suzuha realized even a 32 should have more recoil than this. She fired again, but Kagari didn't flinch even for a moment.
ブランクカートリッジ。どうして？
At some point, all the bullets in Suzuha's gun had been swamped with blanks. That instant's panic was all it took. Kagari reached out for the shirt on the floor in front of the shower room.
この
Suzuha gave up on firing and flung the gun at Kagari. There was a dull thud as the hard barrel slammed into her neck. Caught off balance, she staggered before she could grab the shirt. She could hear Kagari's voice for the first time from within the helmet. Suzuha jumped. She kicked the off-balance Kagari as hard as she could with her toned, muscled legs. There was no time to hold back. Kagari went flying all the way to the edge of the room. That had to have broken a few ribs. Suzuha jumped toward her to continue her attack. But with terrifying speed, Kagari leapt off the ground and charged at Suzuha. There wasn't enough time to come to a full stop. And she got a knife with her. And, yep. And she got her. A sharp blade swept by mere centimeters from her exposed abdomen. Oh yeah, that's right, she's naked during this whole fight. If she'd pulled back even a few tenths of a second later, the knife would have fatally sliced open her gut.
Oh my!
The blood rushed to Suzuha's head. Kagari was serious. She was planning to kill her. There was no hesitation in her movements. Suzuha leaped back and searched for something she could use as a weapon, but the other guns were probably no different. There was a good chance they'd all had their ammo swapped with blanks too. It was even possible all her self-defense knives had been taken. Which left? There were several knives carefully stored in the kitchen. Yuki had brought them over to use in teaching the other girls how to cook. But Kagari had evidently noticed them as well, and she was moving to keep Suzuha from reaching them.
へえ、ずいぶん離れしてるじゃないか。とてもマシンの中でベソベソ泣いてた子供とは思えないな。驚いたよ。
Suzuha kept her distance from Kagari as she slowly moved along the wall. Her competitive drive burned even brighter as she tried to come up with a way to overcome her disadvantage.
ほら、カガリ、これだろ。
She picked up her shirt from in front of the shower room and took the green keychain out of its pockets.
どうした？取りに来なよ。
Her fingers moved as if to crush it. She could see Kagari twitch. For the first time, she could detect a hint of emotion beyond the helmet. And in an instant, she threw it at Kagari's stomach. The keychain flew in a slow arc, like she was tossing it to a friend. Something they loved was thrown like that. Even the fiercest warrior would instinctively reach out both hands to grab it. Kagari was no exception. She carefully held her mother's memento in both her empty left hand and the right hand that still clutched the knife. Using the slow arc of the keychain as a camouflage, Suzuha ran at her in a straight line. Her right fist connected hard with Kagari's stomach. Then her left arm smashed Kagari's head to the side. I just wanted the helmet off. I want to see what she looks like. Kagari's body fell to the ground, her right shoulder taking the brunt of the fall. Suzuha could hear the sound of her joint dislocating. The knife slipped from her grasp. Suzuha got behind her and mounted her, twisting her right arm mercilessly. At the same time, she slipped her own left arm around Kagari's neck and squeezed hard. Well, this definitely will not be my thumbnail. I will have to probably do a little bit of censoring for YouTube. She really looks like Yuki with the hair down. She could hear something like a moan from Kagari's throat. She could both hear and feel the bones in her arm and neck creaking. Yeah, she really looks like Yuki. Man, it's crazy how long her hair is. But Kagari picked up the knife on the floor with her left hand and once again tried to use it on Suzuha. Suzuha was forced to squeeze her arm and neck even harder.
もうやめろ、ガガリ。今の私にはお前の気持ちだってわかるんだ。でもやっぱりそれは間違ってる。間違ってるんだ。
But Kagari didn't stop. If anything, she tried even harder to pull Suzuha away.
こいつ、一体どんな訓練を受けてきたんだ。
Even in all the battles she'd been in, this much pressure on 2 different spots was enough to get even the toughest soldier to submit or fall unconscious. Terrified, Suzuha squeezed even harder. At this rate, she wouldn't simply knock her out. She really would kill her. But if she stopped, Kagari would kill her. What should she do? I feel like she's just saying that to make Suzuha kind of like calling her big sis, right? I feel like that's gonna... What's the word? It's gonna drop her defenses a little bit, and she's gonna attack. And then she heard a sad, weak voice from inside the helmet. It startled her, and she relaxed both her arms. Mistake. That's a mistake, but that was just what Kagari had hoped for. The knife came very close to cutting Suzuha's left arm. Imagine Daru walks in. This is quite the thing to see. When she let go to dodge it, Kagari shook her off and kicked at her hips with both legs. Suzuha was slammed back hard into the computer desk, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. She fell to the floor, and the printer and monitor crashed mercilessly into her naked body. She forced herself to stand up, gasping hard as she did so. Kagari's breathing was heavy too. Her right arm was pointed in an impossible direction and hanging limp. She wouldn't be able to use it for a while, probably. But her left arm was still holding the knife.
お前、随分と汚い真似まで覚えたんだな。
Suzuha glared at Kagari's face, not that she could see what it looked like behind that helmet. The two of them fell silent as they tried to catch their breath. The tension in the air was so thick it was difficult to move a muscle. Sweat rolled down her forehead and into her eyes, but she still didn't blink as she waited for Kagari to make her next move. It was the sound of the front door opening that broke their stalemate. Oh boy, this is awkward. Suzuha felt a chill run down her spine when she heard Itaru's voice. Oh yeah, that's right. It's like, forget about Daru seeing her naked. Kagari might kill him. That's something that could happen.
ダメだ父さん、来ちゃダメ。
She yelled at the exact same instant he turned on the lights. The sudden brightness was enough to make Suzuha flinch for an instant. Kagari was wearing a full face helmet, and that made all the difference. She leapt towards Itaru just a moment before Suzuha. Oh no! Oh shit. Kagari's black knife went up to his throat. Kagari spun around behind him, using Itaru's huge body as a shield. Every time they talk about Itaru in the descriptions, they always talk about how big his body is. Suzuha staggered toward him, gritting her teeth.
その手を離せ、かがり。父さんに傷一つでも負わせてみろ。たとえお前でも本当に殺す。
But Kagari remained silent as she headed outside the door with her hostage, and then in the next moment she shoved him forward. Itaru lost his balance and fell towards Suzuha. Suzuha fell to the ground underneath his weight. Itaru just barely managed to support himself with his arms and legs to keep from crushing her. Oh god. So he's on top of, like, this is the time where I'm expecting, like, Yuki to walk in and be like, what are you doing with your sister? Suzuha tried to shove him off, using a little more force than she may have intended, but Itaru was so huge it would take him a moment to get up.
だから痩せろって言ったのに。
She was getting away. She somehow managed to crawl out from under him and quickly tried to follow after Kagari. Itaru was still lying on the ground as he tossed the naked Suzuha her shirt. She grabbed it and quickly put it on, then ran outside. But when she looked around the street, the girl in the motorcycle leathers wasn't there. There was no way to even know where she'd gone.
逃げられた。
It would be dangerous to run around trying to find her now. There was a chance Itaru would be attacked while she wasn't at the lab.
今のってまさかかがりたん？
Rintaro came outside as well.
多分間違いない。
そっか。
結局あの子とはこうなっちゃうんだな。
The bruises and wounds were bad enough, but the pain that ached in her heart was the worst of all.
私さ、あの子のこと本当に好きだったんだ。
うん。
小さくても勇敢で、まゆ姉さんを守るためにいつも頑張ってて、私もそんなあの子にいろいろなことを教えた。きっと妹みたいに思ってた。
So I know that Steins Gate is like, you know, that's the ideal world where everybody survives, but maybe Kagari somehow, she's talking about like God or something. Maybe she got like a glimpse, maybe she had the reading Steiner, or like maybe she saw all the world lines where Mayuri kept dying and that's why she said like, I have to protect mom. Maybe she was afraid like if we changed the world line, like something was going to happen to Mayuri, because it tends to do that.
うん。
けどあいつはもう完全に敵だ。
Itaru straightened up her shirt sleeves.
今の鈴葉、なんかエロゲーの地上キャラっぽい格好になってるよ。
I know you're probably trying to break the tension, but what a thing to say.
お
Suzuha was caught completely off guard. True, her t-shirt only came down to just below her hips, roughly the length of a miniskirt. Her breasts were almost completely bared. The shirt's hem was turned up and she felt exposed.
まあ僕は地上物も結構いける口なんで、乱れた裸 T シャツというのもありといえばありですが、むふ。
またそうやってふざける。大怪我してたかもしれないのに。
But Itaru shook his head.
僕さっきはナイフ見て騒いじゃったけど、でも怖がる必要なかったんじゃないかなって。あれがもし僕の聞き間違いじゃなかったら。
Itaru rubbed the part of his neck where the knife blade was.
ナイフを突きつけられてた時、ほんの少しだけど聞こえたんだよ。
Was there like something on it so it wasn't like it wouldn't do anything? It had like a what? Like a what's the thing I'm thinking of? He'll say.
彼女
Oh,
多分
crying.
泣いてた。
Oh, okay. I thought maybe like he heard like maybe the knife had some sort of a guard on it. That's what I was thinking of. Crying under that helmet after that whole battle with Suzuha while holding a knife to Itaru's neck? But why?
だからさ、決めつけるのはまだ早いんじゃね？
父さん、
の？
アイス買ってきてくれた？
I
バ
think
ニ
I
ラ
really need it right now.
ああ、もちろん。
食べたいな。私ちょっと疲れちゃった。
And then she almost fell forward.
で、
Itaru managed to catch her before she hit the ground.
おい、鈴葉。
ごめん、平気。でも少しだけ休ませて。
That was all she had the energy to say. She closed her eyes in her dad's arms, and her consciousness melted away. Okay, well, so with that episode, we have not just, like one antagonist with Dr. Leskinen, who is back in Japan with Maho, wanting to get in touch with Okabe. We also have the motorcycle-clad person who's been kind of stalking Suzuha. And it turns out, that it is Kagari, the girl that's time traveled with her and pointed a gun at Suzuha, and then, Suzuha never heard from her again. They got into quite the tussle, and while it seems like Kagari you know, wouldn't hesitate to kill Suzuha. There was some hesitation based on what Daru said, but now we've got this girl who's come out of the woodwork, and she is like actively after us now, and things are just continuing to ramp up. So yeah, with all that going on, it's like it's July now. Suzuha, she is going to have to like time travel again soon, so I'm curious about like how much of this is left of this particular playthrough. I imagine we'll probably be wrapping it up soon, but I'm excited to see how it is going to end. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned next week for part 9. Until then, bye. Special shoutouts to my top tier patrons: Emily Hornsby, Zoran Ether, Revealing Storm, Asborn Kennedy, iCognito, Harry Gazif, and Jared Fan.